Oh my God, I've dusted off the computer from this off season. Look at this, and the buttons are still working. What a big surprise. Hello, everyone. It's away games, and we've never been more away than the last few months. I'm Kevin McCaffrey,
That's
and over
true.
there, this guy looks familiar. It's Adam Mamawala.
How's it going? I love the implication that you exclusively use your computer for this podcast and nothing else. It's the
Oh,
one thing you own a computer for.
I could have just gone back of the store Target Chromebook, from 2006 if I was going to do it this way. But nope, I went with the Big MacBook and only for Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast that you can find on Twitter at Away Games Pod. And yeah, we're back. This is new. This is not a rerun.
This is not a rerun, and as of about 10 hours ago, there is Major League Baseball that counts this month. How about that?
How about that? Indeed, it's crazy, and
How about that?
it's gonna count from Korea.
Yes. Yeah, when is that? That's like pretty soon, right?
It's like March 20th, I want to say. It's one of those things, and we've Major League Baseball's done this a few times before, where it I feel like when a game started in Japan, and then there's like two games that count, and then there's a week with nothing,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
weird, But
It is
but
weird.
that's what we're
I
doing.
mean, I understand it from a travel perspective and not wanting those two teams to start at a disadvantage, but it is a bit strange. But as for the Cubs open the season at the Texas Rangers. I intend to be there, not for opening day, but I believe for that Sunday game because I'm going to be out in Dallas doing some shows. But I guess the big news of late, after a long period of no news at all, was that the Cubs finally re-signed Cody Bellinger. How you feeling? Is Jed Hoyer a genius after all?
God, that's it's gonna be what breaks me. The discourse, the Jed discourse, the Jed course. I think it's a good deal. 3 years, $80 million for Cody
Hmm.
Bellinger is way less than I think we thought he was going to get. Way less than way less than he thought he was going to get. If you saw any
Yeah,
of the press conference, that was Cody sitting in between, giving big divorced parents vibes. Scott Boras on one side and Jed
yeah,
Hoyer on
exactly.
the other was
Where's Bellinger gonna have Thanksgiving? Nobody knows.
No, I think that's a good question, and I feel like he'd have it at Jed's, but no one would be happy about it in this scenario. Boris
Right.
would be like, "I hope you're having fun over there. I hope it's."
Well, the Ricketts are gonna buy Boston Market for everybody.
Yeah, yes, that sounds kind of nice when you put it like that.
That sounds good.
But longtime listeners know our day job is a night job. We work as comedians, and this the Cody Bellinger deal, 3 years, 80 million. He has an opt out after each of the first 2 years. So if you don't know, the basically the upside for Cody is he gets 30 million in the first year, and if he has a good year, he gets to do the dance again. He gets to go become a free agent again. But I mentioned the comedian thing because the discourse around Jed Hoyer, I think, has reached a level where it's sort of like last week, Shane Gillis, a comedian, hosted Saturday Night Live, and
Hmm.
everyone I saw tweeting about him would have had the same opinion of how it went if they had tweeted before the show happened. It's
Right.
just fucking civil war out there where people
Hmm.
think they're either standing up for anti woke culture or they think everyone's a racist and no one can be
Yeah.
normal about it. And I feel like that's Jed Hoyer stuff. This is a good deal. Jed Hoyer did a
Hmm.
good deal. That does not
Yeah.
erase everything that hasn't been done for years, but I think
Right.
we can give
Exactly.
credit. This was good.
Yeah, and I think my viewpoint is like if you had told me these are your two options, you can either re-sign Cody Bellinger for an 8-year deal for $200 million, in November, or you can have this deal come together at any time, but even last minute. I do think that it's objectively the smarter deal because you don't want to have another Hayward contract. You don't want to have another albatross. And I don't think that Cody's year last year was an anomaly, but I do think that there's something to the idea that, like, okay, he had a huge year in his contract year. Is he capable of repeating that, and is that the norm rather than the couple of years that hopefully were an aberration where he's coming off an injury, he's struggling. So yeah, I think if you're a team like the Cubs, who I don't agree with this standpoint, but they're clearly trying to like build towards something, have a lot of younger guys get in the mix. um if you think that PCA is your center fielder of the future, and if you think that maybe you have a piece who's going to stick at first base in Michael Bush, like, yeah, maybe there's not a case to be made for Cody being here for sure with guaranteed money for the next 8 years or 10 years or whatever it is. Um, but to some degree, I don't know. I don't want to not give Jed credit for anything if he deserves it. But it's a little bit like the Swanson thing last year, which is like, yeah, you got your guy, but you were so close to not getting it that it's hard for me to assume that it was all part of this master plan and you didn't just get kind of lucky in both cases.
I think that's true. I think he obviously is really aggressive about setting a hard line of monetary value that where he's comfortable to go, and he's sort of one of my problems with just the overall philosophy of this particular front office and ownership group is how reactive they are, and not
Mhm.
they don't go get their guy. If their guy comes to them, fantastic. And this
Right.
in this case, you get Cody Bellinger, 3 years, 80 million. It's very the only way that it ends up actually being a 3 year, $80 million deal is if Cody does not do that well. That's the only way it ends up being. So but
Right.
what this is it's a 1 year, $30 million deal. It's very similar to the Stroman contract, right? With the
Yeah. Yeah.
short term with opt outs, and objectively, I think that is a it's a good contract for the team. But I think why this makes sense for Cody is because he's not Juan Soto, he's not Shohei Ohtani, he's not the biggest of big fish level of player, right? He's a really
Mhm.
good player. He has a lot of concerning, I mean, depending on you can decide how concerned you want to be about it, but his contact quality is not great. And part of that is because he changed his two strike approach and became a 300 hitter last year, which is great, hitting like 307, 20 stolen bases, 26 homers, almost 100
Mhm.
RBIs. An incredible year. But the contact quality is such that it's hard to count on going forward. And both with Dansby and Cody, these are two players who are all around very good players, right? They're great defensively, offer some on offense, Cody more than Dansby, but they're not the premier players in Major League Baseball. So it's
Right.
that philosophy, like you say, where you sort of, you know, they just wait for the guy to come down to them, and a couple of
Mhm.
times it's worked. I'd
Yeah.
prefer for an office that picks their guy and just sort of lands the biggest fish, but this is the
Right.
biggest fish that was left to land after, at this point. So fantastic.
Yeah, it's a little bit like I think Cody and even Dansby Swanson are kind of in that like 1A category in terms of star level play. Let's
Yeah.
not to bring up a sore subject, it's a little bit like a Zach Levine. Like there's no questioning that Zach Levine is a very good player, but is he like the guy? Like everyone knows that Cody Bellinger is not Shohei Ohtani.
Hmm.
Arguably no one is Shohei Ohtani, but like
Yeah, right.
he's not at the level of a Freddie Freeman or a Mookie Betts. I'll just name the entire Dodgers roster as their entire
Yeah,
team.
the Dodgers
But
roster, half the Braves. Yeah. It,
yeah. So I think broadly, right? Like it would be nice for the Cubs to ever get the guy that everybody else wants. And
mm,
maybe they did that with John Lester. I think that's probably like the closest I can think of to getting it
hmm
done. I don't remember who else was available the year that they signed Hayward. But it feels like the Cubs as a team in as big of a market as they are with the kind of money they have shouldn't always be and I've used this frame of reference before, doing the like beautiful mind thing where it's like we're not going to go for the prettiest girl because
hmm
she'll spurn us and everyone else will get offended, so we'll just target one of the like you know the lesser options.
Yeah, and Cody, I mean, like, we got to a point where we began the offseason assuming Cody Bellinger was going to get got by the Cubs at some
Mhm.
point, and then it got to a point where we were like, well, maybe fucking not. And then he came around back to the team, and it's great. And the way it dropped was fun. It's been a long time since we
Yeah.
had that kind of fun where I remember I saw it right when it happened because I was drunk and in a hotel room in State College, Pennsylvania by myself after a show. So I was like, just I had Twitter on while I had Law and Order SVU on in the background. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, is this real? Cody signed in the middle of the
Mhm.
night. So that was a fun appearance. Now, And like, I don't want to be someone who's throwing a wet blanket on fun stuff, because it's fun to have Cody around, and it's really fun to see how excited the other players were about Cody
Yeah.
coming back. They clearly really like this guy.
Mhm.
And, I mean, to the point where Dansby was at the Cubs convention saying
Sure.
out loud in a very fun way, like, you gotta sign Cody, which is
Mhm.
it's nice to have Dansby on this team where it's cool to have a guy who roots for the Cubs like we do, like the fans do,
Yeah.
where he's like, can we win, please? Can we do the winner stuff?
Mhm.
Um, but not to be a wet blanket, but I think the way this dragged on, it does. And then getting Cody as almost a surprise at the end, it makes you think like, fuck yeah, now we're ready to go, in a way where you look at last year's team, which wasn't good enough, and
Mhm.
the Cubs were losing Stroman and Bellinger were the two big players they were losing.
Right.
They replaced Stroman with Shota Imanaga, who seems fun, great, cool, but
Mhm.
that's probably a pretty even swap. And they replaced Cody Bellinger, one of his best years, with Cody Bellinger. So, okay,
Right.
we're kind of back to even. Michael Bush pending, right? And prospects pending.
Yeah, I
It's
can.
close.
So, first of all, two things can be true at once, right? The first is that I don't think that the Cubs did enough to make themselves an actual contender. Are they a contender for the NL Central title? Absolutely, and they
Yeah.
should be, and that should have been the baseline for what we expected anyway.
Should be the basement
Um,
every year for this team. Yeah.
sure. I also think that with the addition of Counsell as the manager,
Hmm.
I think you can make the case that over the course of the year, Shota will have a better full year than Stroman did, because Stroman was, a tale of two halves basically. The first half he looked unhittable, and then
Hmm.
after the London game got Mancini, it seemed to break him fundamentally, and he looked pretty bad for a lot of the second half of the year. So if you figure that Shota is going to have a comparable, if not better, year than Stroman, that Tyone almost has to be better over the course of a year than he was in his first
I
year with
think
the
that's
Cubs.
fair. Yeah.
That's, that makes you feel like with that happening, with Bush playing first, he has to be better than a Hosmer Mancini, uh, you know, platoon over there.
Quite
However,
literally below replacement level stuff is what
yes,
we have.
horrible.
Yeah.
And in a season that came down to like a couple games, that absolutely kills you.
Yeah.
The thing that I want to hesitate from doing is assuming that Bellinger's going to have the exact same year that he did last year, assuming that Justin Steele is going to have the same exact year. And I
Yeah.
hope they do, and I think there's a good chance that they will. But if you're going to assume that a bunch of people are going to improve, you also can't assume that other people who had great years aren't going to regress. So I can talk myself into thinking that there's an extra 5 wins there and the Cubs win 90 games and win the Central. Can
Hmm.
I talk myself into them being a World Series competitor? Not really, but I guess the Diamondbacks got there last year, and in some ways, it's almost like the Rays getting there, where it's like, well, no. You're taking the wrong message away from this. If you're looking at the Diamondbacks and saying like, oh, this is how you win World Series. First of all, they didn't, and second of all,
Yes.
that's the anomaly. Generally speaking, the teams that invest long term are the teams that have the most success. I
Yeah.
think
And that, I
Dodgers
mean,
might be the anomaly though.
and taking the wrong lesson from it is exactly sort of what Tom Ricketts was doing publicly, because they were asking about the Cubs. This is before Cody signed, I think, is when he was making comments about this, saying that the baseball budget won't go up until revenues go up. And it's very cute to have the owner talk like that's our job to make revenues go up.
Right.
That's your job, dog. That's
Yeah.
Also, I'd love to see you open those books and show me exactly where the revenues are.
Hmm.
I bet we're not sub Philadelphia Phillies like you're acting. But
Yeah.
he specifically referenced the Arizona Diamondbacks, and when the owner of the Chicago Cubs is referencing the Diamondbacks as sort of an aspirational idea, that sucks. Like that's not that you shouldn't see yourself in the world of the Diamondbacks. And God bless, it's a fun young team with
Right.
some very, very fun top end prospects who made the World Series last year. But I prefer an owner of the Cubs who thinks about the Cubs in more in the Yankees Dodgers sort of way, as they should. But but now at this point we basically have what the team is going to be. You'd have to assume, because
Hmm.
the numbers, just because of the complicated contracts, the numbers aren't 100% clear on any website or resource that I've seen. It looks like they're sitting around at a payroll of around 230 million when the CBT threshold, the first level of it, is around 237. So according to Sportac, that's where we're at. It seems like they're within a couple million one way or another of the luxury tax threshold. So you'd have to think they're probably not going to sign any of the big guys left. To Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, and Jordan Montgomery are still out there, but
yeah, it almost is starting to feel like Snell, maybe not Montgomery, but Snell could be like this year's Kimbrel, where, you know, the Yankees just throw a bunch of money at him in June when they're not playing well over the first 2 months.
it's weird. And depending on where the Cubs land on this around the luxury tax, if you're even if you are a dollar over, to me, you might as well go over by a good bit. And
Right.
I would be curious to see, like, would they have an offer for a Blake Snell that's similar to the Cody deal, where it's, you know, a big money up front but an opt out immediately? I don't know why
Yeah.
you wouldn't. I mean, I do know why you wouldn't, because they don't want to spend money, but you know, it's fun to think about if we were booking the team on a PlayStation game, you know, maybe that's the way we would do it, but I think that's unlikely. The other signings the Cubs have made, this is new since we've been on the air, at least. Hector Neris has, he signed for 1 year, 9 million. Veteran. Yeah. Veteran bullpen dude, solidifying the bullpen a little bit there.
More than replaces Fulmer in my estimation.
I think that's a good way to think about it. Is sort of like a Fulmer plus probably scenario. And then I feel like there's sort of a pack of mini, I don't want to say Cub killers, but Cub wounders that they've signed to non-roster invites here. With David Peralta, I feel like gave us a lot of trouble in Arizona, left-handed hitting outfielder.
Yep.
Dominic Smith and Garrett Cooper have also signed to minor league deals with a chance to make the team.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think the whole offseason kind of soured me, and that's not unlike a lot of off seasons in recent years, which kind of sucks. But I do think that now that they have re-signed Bellinger, I don't think there's any reason that they can't or shouldn't win this division. Like, I think the Brewers have gotten worse. I think the Cardinals will be better than they were last year, just because they're the Cardinals, and I kind of think that was uncharacteristic that they struggled that much.
I do too.
And also, like, not having Wainwright for a whole season is going to be a net positive for them.
Yeah, last year's Wainwright was yeah.
But now, I mean, you've got the Brewers who no longer have Corbin Burns, and that has to help. I think we'll obviously do a season preview episode, but if I'm picking the Cubs to win the Central, which I would at least like to out of optimism, I could see it being like the Brewers fall down to third or fourth, and then you've got like the Reds and Cardinals more so in the mix. I think the Pirates are certainly the consensus last place team in the Central, but
yes,
you know, people thought the Orioles would be last place last year, and that's why you play the game. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, do you want to know where PECOTA is landing these teams?
I do remember at one point threatening to tattoo PECOTA on my ass if it was something happened with the Cubs. I didn't get the tattoo, so I don't really remember what I said. But
I want to say, I mean, it was the first or second year we were doing this podcast, so it had to be, what,
18 or 19?
Yeah, 2018, 2019, where PECOTA was predicting the Cubs to win. It was something like 82 games or something. Yeah. They were predicting the Cubs to win, and we both felt strongly, your ass felt very strongly about that being an incorrect prediction, that the Cubs would be better than that, and they were significantly. I mean, PECOTA thinks the Cubs of this year are pretty similar to that year. Right now, PECOTA baseball, which is, if you don't know, it is the Baseball Prospectus projection system, their statistical model for simulating out a season and projecting where the teams are going to land. They have the Cubs projected to win 81.8 games. And so they're, you know, we're rounding this up. An 82 and 80 season is what PECOTA says the Cubs are going to do. And PECOTA
says the Cubs are going to be mid. to put it in young people
Mid
parlance.
AF. Yes,
Yeah.
they are. And the St. Louis Cardinals are projected on top of the division with 84.6 wins right now. So
Hmm.
it's a difference of about 3 wins, according to PECOTA, which, if you believe the hype, is the Craig Council difference. That is
Yeah,
the.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
And they
what have the Cardinals done to deserve that PECOTA score?
So, PECOTA is racist,
Sure.
as we know. So they just like the
PECOTA
Cardinals
stands
type.
for the anthem and kneels for the cross. I get it.
There you go. Thank you. That is, I'm looking at the roster because yeah, it's speaking of mid. What the Cardinals did this offseason was real mid stuff. They picked up Sonny Gray, who's good. He's a
Hmm.
good pitcher. Had a very good year last year with the Twins. They also picked up Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn, who have been good in the past. Lynn has had some high highs, but these guys are, seemingly past, they're past their best at this point. So you're looking at the rotation, and this rotation it's featuring Sonny Gray at the top of it, and then Miles Mikolas, Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, Steven Matz. I mean, I think you'd have to say the Cubs rotation you hope is better, especially with the
Right.
depth of the Cubs rotation, because we don't know who
Hmm.
the fifth starter in the Cubs rotation is going to be, right?
No, it could be any number of people.
Yeah, we know it's Steele, Hendricks, Imanaga, Tyone, and then the fifth starter is going to be some combination of things, but could be Drew Smiley, Jordan Wicks, Javier Assad, Hayden Wisniewski. We don't exactly know, but I do like the depth there and the prospects the Cubs might have coming up, better than what St. Louis has. But also, St. Louis has, I mean, the lineup is good. And I think
Sure.
that's the thing. I think you're looking at the lineup, and I think St. Louis's lineup is. Let's just name some dudes. They've got Nolan Arenado. They got another Nolan Gorman. They got Paul Goldschmidt, Wilson Contreras, if we remember that fella.
Hmm.
Lars Nootbaar, Tommy Edman, Dylan Carlson might be starting from the bench. I like this area of the year because this is when you look at rosters and you sort of like forget, oh wait, that guy's on
Hmm.
that team now. Brandon
Right.
Crawford is a Cardinal now.
Yeah.
Um, so Jared Young, our old friend Jared Young is a
Ah.
Cardinal. Are people freaking out like they did over Wilson Contreras? That Jared Young has betrayed us and gone to St.
Oh
Louis?
God. Yeah. I wish him. I wish him well.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I do think those are the two teams it's probably going to
Right.
be between those two for the division. Milwaukee is projected a couple games back of the Cubs right now.
Yeah.
Cincinnati projected
Mhm.
78.5. It's a mid division.
I do think that morale wise, we have an ongoing group chat with our buddy Ken Schultz, and prior to Bellinger being signed, and even now, I feel like some of the sour taste is still there. I just find myself like being less excited about the Cubs in general than I have been in a long time. Not because I think they're bad, but just because the like organizationally, I'm so annoyed by things that it's like sucking some of the joy of it from me. And I was the sort of person like I've never been so obsessive that I would like try to watch every spring training game. But that was always like a date on my calendar is like this is the first spring training game. I'm really excited to see and I just didn't feel that way this year. And I miss it. I miss that.
I miss it too, and I do think it's the Cubs. I believe will be better this year than they were last year, and that's the
Hmm.
direction you want to move. That's good. I think they'll be better by a little bit. I think what affects the enthusiasm you're talking about, it's not the players because we like the players who are here. We root for them. When I'll be excited to watch regular season baseball, but I think why maybe neither you or I have been as tuned into spring training or the beginning of it as we have many other years. I think it's just overall, it's not even the quality of the team, it's the ambition of the organization.
Hmm.
They're showing us where they think they belong, and it's sort of like what we said when Ricketts compared himself to the Diamondbacks. It's like, all right, well, you're telling us where you think you should land, and that's below where we used to think we should land.
Right.
So, yeah, I obviously I feel you on that vibe, and a lot of when I'm talking when I'm talking about being enthusiastic for the year, it is like it's sort of you know when you're in a relationship and it's and it's almost over, and you're like, well, we've
Mhm.
had some good times. I'm not breaking
Yeah,
up with the Cubs. I will love them for the rest of my life. I'm going to tell our
yeah.
children that. Look, we've always had these times. Um, but yeah, I feel you there.
Yeah, and I'm sure that once the season actually gets started in earnest, I'll be just as excited and just as thrilled when they pull off a comeback, and just as upset when they blow a save, and I'll be the same as I've always been. Um, but I think when I look at the past decade and now, I do at times still find myself late night on YouTube watching like a 20-minute recap of the wild card game in 2015, just because it brings me joy. And then there are times where I'm like, huh, Kristen Orphea. Hadn't thought about that name in a while. But
Yeah,
the oh, Austin Jackson getting an at bat. That's very surprising.
Cameron
So
Maben, look at that.
exactly.
I mean,
But
in later
I
years, but yeah.
think I think the real first of all, I still have an immense amount of gratitude for 2016, and I will always
Mm.
have that. But I think there's a real fear in assuming that things are going to ever work out that perfectly again. Like for that to happen, especially seeing how the trajectory of some of those core guys' careers have gone, right? And
Mhm.
I'm not a pro Jed, burn it down in 2021 guy, but other than Rizzo,
Mhm.
Javi is a shell of himself. Chris Bryant cannot stay healthy. Addison Russell is an asshole and also like got bad at baseball.
It's amazing how bad
All
at
of
baseball
those
he is in
things,
Mexico currently.
yeah, he's terrible. But
Yeah.
all of those things had to line up in such a way that it allowed that to happen. And my point is that if we're sitting around signing guys on 1-year deals, or, being less ambitious than we could be in free agency because we think that PCA and Matt Shaw are going to be our next like Rizzo and Bryant, they might not be, and they probably won't be.
Hmm.
So I dismiss the idea that like that's how you need to run a team the size of the Cubs with the market share that the Cubs have.
Yeah. And then yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And I think part of the when there is a disconnect for you and me is it's hard to get the feeling for a team when you are running the top of your team on like short 1 year opt out sort of deals.
Right.
The feeling, I mean,
Yeah.
you just don't. It feels like there's, you don't have the soul to it that the other team had. I will say one thing I am excited about, not to be a looking back as opposed to looking forward guy, but this is a little bit of both. Is seeing the tickets become available for the return of we're knock on wood. Hopefully, we will see
Mhm.
both Javi Baez and Anthony Rizzo return to Wrigley Field this
Yeah.
year with their current teams in August and September. Javi and the Tigers, I believe, are here. Like I think it's August 20 to 22nd, and the
Mhm.
Yankees are here over basically Labor Day weekend, September 6th through the 8th, and those are of the games on the calendar this year. Those are a couple that I'm really, really looking forward to.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to clit to believe it. Um,
Oh man, the social media team really had a hell of a week, and it's not. I mean, I don't know how much of the social media team. It's got to be the marketing team that came up with that. Did you guys, if you guys don't know, that you have to see it was the hashtag, and see it was with a C for the Cubs. And folks, that looks like you have to clip. And in their
mhm.
defense, you do. So
You
I
do.
mean,
You do.
it's
If you can
just
find it. Can
yeah.
be elusive.
God.
It's a little
Jed
reminiscent
Hoyer is
of
going to
the
wait for the clit to come to him. It's going to have to settle for a deal.
it's a little reminiscent of the Charlotte Hornets City Connect uniforms that just said like big CLT on the
Yeah.
front, because that's I think the abbreviation for the Charlotte Airport. Which like why is that what we're honoring? We're honoring a fucking airport.
That's very zombie version of the Hornets, isn't it? Very just
Yes.
like yeah. And that's the thing we haven't even this isn't even the first major sports team to make the clit mistake. Like we did it, and then they used the Twitter edit function and got it to you have
Very
to
funny.
SEE it, and it's like, well, now the C's not even in there, and it doesn't make any sense. Like
Yeah.
how did we do this?
But yeah, I mean, I'm still excited about the coming year of games. I was very much hoping to be. Are you planning to go when Rizzo's there?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, I think it's
barring
like Labor Day weekend or something like that.
yeah, September 6th through the 8th. I believe. Yeah, I'm going to be there unless unless I am offered a deal I can't refuse work wise.
Sure.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's my plan. And we're gonna see the Cubs when they come out and see play the Mets in at
Hmm.
the end of April or early May. Yeah. Can I tell you this is I know this isn't the season preview episode, but I'm looking at the projected lineup and stuff, and just something I'm finding myself happy about, and I'm happy Chris Morel is still here when we were talking about the feeling for this
Yes.
team.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
A
yeah.
guy who's been rumored on the trade block because he's obviously they have yet to really find a full defensive home for him, and he made kind of a sloppy deal of things at third base yesterday, but we're hoping that gets better. He's a guy I love that he's here. I'm excited about him, and looking at the catching situation, Miguel Amaya, I'm excited to see more of catching this year, sort
Yeah.
of transitioning to maybe catcher of the future as well.
Right, and that's we talked about Mancini and Hosmer. Lest we forget, hard-hitting Tucker Barnhart, who got a not insignificant number of at bats last year. So
Mhm.
if you just cut out that bullshit,
Yeah.
that's not to say that other people won't struggle. I'm sure there's going to be some early season and perhaps all season struggles from people that
Right.
you would expect to be better. But to not knowingly give at bats to people whose lifetime batting average is 210, that would be great.
That sounds great, and optimistic for that. Adam, before I know you're losing some teeth today. You're getting some oral surgery
I
later.
am.
So we're
I
gonna
am.
wrap this up so you can rest those teeth before they say goodbye to them.
Listen,
Any
these teeth, I've got two baby teeth that never grew out, and these teeth have seen me through a lot. They were there clenched up when Alex S. Gonzalez booted that ball, and they were still along for the ride in 2016. And it's been some highs, it's been some lows, and it's been a lot of pizza.
Yeah, that's so much. That actually is much more emotional than I thought that transition was going to go. That's
No word yet on the. I do believe that there's a great deal of interest that has accrued from the Tooth Fairy, and I am not
oh
sure
my God,
exactly how to collect.
the inflation in Joe Biden's America. This is
Right.
yeah.
And I do believe the Ricketts told their kid that the Tooth Fairy is not real, so they didn't have to pay up. But that's a different story.
The Tooth Fairy's got a 1 year option. Folks, we're at Away Games Pod on Twitter. If you we're talking even when we're not talking on the mics, we're talking about the Cubs over there. Welcome back, Cody. Hello, Hector Neris, and possibly Dom Smith, David Peralton, Garrett Cooper. We got some new Cubs and some new old Cubs, and spring training's happening. So we'll be back with less of a break between this and the next one. Adam, any other thoughts before you and your teeth leave us?
No, no, no. I got some shows to plug, but I don't know that that's ever once worked when I've done it on this podcast. So I'm gonna just say, R.I.P. to my two baby teeth.
Hey, come see me in Boulder, Colorado, March 8th
Yeah,
and
do
9th.
that. Album recording.
Yes, recording an album. Thanks, folks. Thanks for listening. Welcome back, Cody. Bye.